Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this session. So before I start, I would just like to understand, how many of you have already started your GMAT preparation. So if you have already started your GMAT preparation, can you type a yes in the chat? And if you have not started your GMAT preparation, can you type a no? So those of you who have started your preparation, just type yes. And those who haven't, please type a no. All right. So quite a few of you have already started. That's good. That's good to note. Okay, so in today's session, I would cover a little bit about what the GMAT is, how to start, how to prepare for the exam. What are the things that you should not do? Things that you should not do while preparing for the GMAT exam. There are some common mistakes that students do when they start out to prepare. So I would just talk about those as well. And finally, we'll hopefully solve a couple of questions. So you will get your hands on a couple of GMAT questions, and then you can try to solve them. I would also tell you, how you solve questions in regular, like day-to-day life, versus how you would solve a question on GMAT exam day. Ultimately, the GMAT exam is not just a test of your knowledge, but you have to keep things like timing, etc. in mind. So it's a timed exam. So strategies and shortcuts are more important than pure knowledge. So will probably you'll get to understand what I'm talking about, when we solve a couple of questions. You don't have to worry about taking notes or anything. This session is recorded and you would get access to the recording. Okay, so some of you are already Jamboree students, so you know Jamboree. Those of you who don't know Jamboree, so we have been in the training industry since 1993. We train students on exams such as GMAT, GRE, TOEFL, IELTS, and we help students apply to universities which accept these scores. So it's primarily a study abroad kind of approach. But any Indian university, if they accept the GMAT or the GRE, so we would help you apply to those colleges as well. So students who come to us, they come to us primarily, to build their profile, to prepare for their exam, whatever is missing on their profile, basically, those kind of that advice they come to get from us, and to shortlist universities, apply to those universities, get the visas. So it's the whole deal, right? So it's not just a GMAT prep kind of approach. So ultimately, nobody takes the GMAT because it's it's a hobby or something. You take the GMAT exam because you want to apply to universities and because you want to get admission. So shortlisting universities, deciding what program would be best suited for your profile. So that is an important aspect. And when thinking of universities, when thinking of programs, you should also think about the return on investment, right? How much it's gonna cost. How can you improve your chances of getting scholarships, etc. So all those conversations should also happen. It should not be the case that you just prepare for the GMAT and get a good score, and then you realize that, oh, it's just the whole thing is way too expensive, or I'm not even eligible to get a loan, etc. So please have those conversations as well. And as I had mentioned earlier, if anybody wants to have a detailed one-on-one, customized profile evaluation discussion with one of our admissions counselors, please leave your number in the chat. In today's session, I would be talking primarily about the GMAT exam. So I would not be talking about what's meant by profile, how can you improve your profile, how can you identify the gaps in your profile. So I would not be covering those points. So if you want to schedule a profile evaluation session, then please leave your number in the chat. Okay, I see a lot of you typing, so I'll pause here for a moment to let you finish your typing. So just to clarify, some of you are asking, so see, your messages are coming only to me, right? So you don't have to worry about, no, there should not be any security concerns, etc. Okay, moving on. A little bit about the GMAT exam. So the GMAT exam, so there are 4 broad sections. The first section, is the AWA section, which is an essay writing section. You have to write an essay. You have got 30 minutes to write the essay, and it is scored on a scale of 0 to 6. Then there is the integrated reasoning section. It is similar to the DI section of the CAT exam. Some of you may have prepared for the CAT or may have taken the CAT. So just so that you can compare. So the IR section is like a data interpretation kind of section. So there is data, there is written conversations, there is some graphs, etc. So and then you have to kind of analyze them and answer questions. Here you will have to solve 12 questions in 30 minutes. It is scored on a scale of 1 to 8. So the minimum you will get is 1 and the maximum that you would get is 8. So the scores of the AWA and the IR section, these scores do not contribute to the overall score of 800, right? So you may have heard that GMAT, is scored on a scale of 200 to 800. So 800 is the maximum that you can score. So this marks that you get, out of 800, so that comes from the math and the verbal sections alone. So the scores of the AWA section and the IR section, they do not get added to these scores. So your GMAT scorecard would have 3 scores. You will have 1 score for the AWA section, you will have a score for the IR section, and then you will have a score out of 800. So when we talk about getting a 700, 750 plus, so we are kind of talking about the math and the verbal section alone, right? Universities usually do not have any cutoffs for the IR section. So a 4 to 5 is considered to be a good score. Universities expect at least a 4 in the AWA section. So it's more like a cutoff. So whether you get a 4 or a 6 does not make much of a difference. So you should not get less than 4. So minimum 4 you should get. So that's the importance of these 2 sections. And when preparing also, you will be spending majority of your time in the quant and the verbal portion, right? Not these 2 you will probably end up doing when you start taking full-length mock test, and it's perfectly okay. The math section has 31 questions, and you have got 62 minutes to solve these questions. So you have got 2 minutes per question. The verbal section, on the other hand, there are 36 questions. You have 65 minutes. So as you notice, you have less than 2 minutes per question. And because of this timing that you have, this is what makes the GMAT exam difficult. So if I give you the GMAT paper today and I don't put any time limits, if I just ask you to solve it, taking as much time as you want to, all of you would probably end up getting an 800, right? But the problem is that the why the GMAT exam becomes difficult for a lot of students is that it's not just a test of your knowledge. It also tests your time management a lot. So when you are practicing, when you are taking a full-length mock test, make sure that you keep an eye on the timing as well, right? So this in short is the GMAT exam structure. If you want to take a screenshot of this, feel free to do so. Okay. Now, what is GMAT prep? So what should you do and what should you not do? More importantly, what should you not do? So your GMAT preparation should be focused only, only and only on the GMAT. So what that means is that just stick to the GMAT syllabus. Fortunately, the syllabus of GMAT is fixed. The type of questions that you will get, that is also fixed. The number of questions that you will get is fixed. Number of questions that you will get from each type of question, that is also fixed. So in a sense, the GMAT is a very predictable exam. Hence, it is easy to prepare for. But what we have observed is that Indian students, they are more used to CAT kind of exams, right? Where anything can come from anywhere. So they apply the same approach to the GMAT also. So instead of focusing only and only on the syllabus, they end up doing far more content. They end up spending a lot more time on doing things that are not even tested on the exam. So the very first step of your GMAT preparation is that get the official guide or go to the official website of GMAT, which is mba.com. Check out the syllabus and stick only and only to the syllabus, right? So now what do I mean by it? So GMAT is not an exam of of grammar improvement. So don't worry about grammar. Grammar is not tested directly on the exam. So only certain rules of grammar are tested, not the entire list of grammar rules, right? So check out, and the syllabus is spelled out for you. No, you don't even have to hunt for it. It is spelled out for you. It is there. So don't treat the GMAT exam as a preparation for overall grammar improvement. It is not. You have to only practice the rules that are tested on the exam. Don't treat the GMAT prep as a vocabulary preparation exam. There are a lot of students who go to Play Store or App Store and download vocabulary apps to improve vocabulary. But please understand that GMAT is not going to test you on your vocabulary, right? The GMAT questions, they are not, the level of vocabulary is not very high. It's not a GRE exam, right? So the level of vocabulary is not very high. So whatever English that you would encounter on the GMAT exam, you will understand that language. You will understand that English. So don't worry about, memorizing words, etc. You should not waste time doing that. GMAT is also not a test of your math skills. Only a certain number of concepts are tested on the GMAT exam. Tough concepts like trigonometry, calculus, they are not tested on the GMAT exam. Probably the most difficult concept that comes on the GMAT is that of permutation, combination, and probability. That's it. Everything else is 9th, 10th level maths. Only a couple of concepts from class 11 is there. So as I said, permutation, combination, probability, little bit of coordinate geometry. That's it. That's the only class 11 concept that would come with the exam. Everything else is what you have learned in 9th and 10th. So even if you are in in class 11, 12, if you have not studied math, or even after your class 12, if you went into humanities stream, or if you did a BCom or anything where direct maths you have not studied, that's not a problem at all. The GMAT math level is class 9th and 10th level maths. Every one of you, each one of you would have studied that level of math, right? So you will need a little bit of brushing up, obviously. You will need to go back and revise a little, some of the concepts and formulae, but that's about it. It's not high level maths. So don't think of the GMAT math as a high level math thing. It's not. We get a lot of doctors, people who have not studied maths from after class 10, and they are also able to get good scores. All you have to do is just stick to the syllabus, do a little bit of revision and a lot of practice. That's it. When you are practicing, whether it is math or verbal, again, this is one of the most common mistakes that students do. They focus a lot on quantity. They solve different types of books, different types of questions on the internet, but they don't spend enough time, analyzing those questions or analyzing their answers for those questions. So the GMAT exam is unlike any exam that you have taken till now, right? In school or in college, if you do a lot of questions, if you solve a lot of questions, if you solve past years, papers, then there's a pretty good chance that, some of the questions will get repeated, right? That's how we prepare for our school and college exams. We solve past year question papers and some of the questions get repeated. So we do well, right? But GMAT, is not like that. On the GMAT exam, every student gets a unique set of questions. So no matter how many questions you solve, no matter how many books you solve, it's 100% guaranteed that you will not get any of those questions on your GMAT exam, right? So there is no advantage to solving a lot of questions. What you should focus on is understanding that you are able to find the errors, understanding that you are able to set your strategies in place. So that's what you should do. So if you're solving, for example, 20 questions in a day, then make sure that you analyze your performance very, very carefully. GMAT is a multiple choice question exam, MCQ. For each question, you will get 5 answer options and only one of them is going to be correct. So other 4 are wrong. So when you are analyzing your performance, so you have to be 100% sure why the other 4 options are wrong. So it's not just enough to know why you chose the correct answer. You should also know why the other 4 options are wrong. So that's how you should prepare. If you are solving 20 questions in a day, then revise those questions or review those questions to understand that your reason for eliminating the other 4 options in every question now is the correct reason. Okay, that should be your focus, not on the number of questions that you solve. I repeat, no, none of the questions that you will solve, none of those questions will come on your GMAT exam. So there is absolutely no advantage, to do like tons of questions, right? So you should just focus on doing the preparation right. Focus on quality rather than quantity. Solve only GMAT type of questions. That means stick to official sources, stick to official guide, GMAT books, GMSE books, GMSE material, not random books like, everywhere else. So because GMAT has a unique type of questions, unique pattern, and there is a lot of official material. So even if you just do the official material, that's more than enough. Okay. Then the next part is that do not ignore the AWA section. Right? As I told you earlier, universities have a cutoff. Actually, the AWA section is the only section where universities impose a cutoff. Out of 6, you will need to get at least a 4. So do not postpone your AWA practice. Whenever you are taking a full-length mock test, take the AWA essay also, write the AWA essay also, send it to your faculty for review, right? And get feedback, incorporate those feedbacks so that you get at least a 4 in the essay. And last point is that focus on time management. Your accuracy, it's good to have high accuracy. If you solve 10 questions, and you get all 10 of them correct, great. But did you get those questions correct given within the time limit? That's more important. So do not take your eyes off time management. So very often I get students ask me that how much time does it take to prepare for the GMAT exam? This is the most common question that I encounter, right? How much time does it take to prepare for the GMAT exam? So to explain that, and I'm sure some of you would also have the same question, how much time does it take to prepare for the GMAT exam? All right, so your GMAT preparation should be in 5 phases. GMAT tests you on 5 skills, right? GMAT wants, so getting a high GMAT score means mastering these 5 skills. The first skill is concepts. Obviously, you should know what the skills, we should know the concepts that are being tested on the GMAT exam. Whether it is reading comprehension or geometry, you should know, you should be thorough with the concepts, right? So the first phase is concepts. At this stage, don't worry about timing. Don't worry about how many questions you are getting right, wrong, because your focus is only to learn the concepts. And this, at least those of you who are already studying with Jamboree, so this part is taken care of in your classes. In our classes, we teach you all the concepts that are going to be tested on the GMAT exam. Then the second phase is when you master accuracy. Let's say you know all the concepts, but when you see a question, how do you know which concept to apply? So in the verbal section, let's say, there are like 50 or 60 grammar rules that are tested on the exam. But when you get a question, how do you know, which rule to first try out, right? So to get to that stage, you will need to solve a lot of questions, and that's just the step called accuracy. Now at this stage, you just again don't worry about time. No, we are not worrying about time. The second phase also. Here you are just putting into practice the concept that you learned in the first phase, right? So take like 20 questions, 30 questions, make a set, solve them, see how many you get correct. Don't worry about time. Okay. And when you reach about a 50% accuracy, that means if you're solving, let's say 20 questions, you should end up getting at least 10 of them correct. So when you like reach about 50% accuracy, then you move to phase 3. Phase 3. Now, this is a cumulative skill building exercise basically. After the first phase, when you move into the second phase, you are gaining one skill. So the third phase is when this is the stage when you work on your time management. The 50% accuracy that you were getting in the second phase, you should now try to maintain within time limit. And you will realize the moment you start looking at time, you will realize that your accuracy would drop. So you have to practice enough questions in a timed environment to make sure that you are getting about 50-60% accuracy in the time limit, within the time limit. Once you do that, then you move to something called, building a skill called mental agility. Now this skill is unique to the GMAT exam. You will not see this any other exam in your entire student life, right? So in school, let's say, if when you have a science exam, in a 3-hour science exam, so to say, so all the questions that you would get in those 3 hours, that's going to be science. If you have an economics exam, then all the questions in those 3 hours are going to be based on economics. But on the GMAT, there is going to be essay writing, then this data interpretation questions, then math, then verbal. So you will need to develop the flexibility. Agility stands for flexibility. So you would need to develop that flexibility of mind to switch between different types of questions without losing accuracy and without slowing down, right? So your speed and your accuracy should be maintained when you solve different types of questions. The mind frame that you have to be in while solving a reading comprehension passage is totally different, from what you would need to solve, let's say, a grammar question, so to say. And sometimes students, they lose out their speed, they slow down, they lose out on the accuracy when they do this switching. So this is that fourth skill. And this skill, as I said, is unique to the GMAT exam. The GMAT exam requires you to do that because there are different types of questions, different types of topics. So, and how do you build this skill? By doing sectional tests. Initially, I showed you that in the maths, you have to do 31 questions in 62 minutes. In verbal, you have to do 36 questions in 65 minutes. So one section of verbal, that means solving 36 questions in 65 minutes. So you'll be doing different sections, a sectional test. That's how you build your, mental agility. And at this stage now, if you're, while switching between different types of questions, if you are able to maintain a 50 to 60% accuracy in the given time period, right? All these skills are cumulative. Then you move to the final stage of your preparation, which is when you build your stamina. The GMAT is a 3.5-hour exam. It's a long exam. Maybe your school and college exams were also not that long. So sitting and concentrating for 3.5 hours itself is very, very difficult. Especially students, those of you who have work experience. Some of you have probably not taken any exam in the last 2-3 years, right? So for you guys, concentrating for 3.5 hours, at a stretch is going to be a challenge in itself. So you have to build a stamina for that. If you get tired, you will start making silly mistakes, right? So stamina is very, very important. And the only way to build your stamina is by taking full-length test. Full-length test means all the 4 sections of the exam, right? So that, and in one sitting, right? Exactly like how it happens on the GMAT exam. So these are the 5 phases of your GMAT preparation. Students, where they go wrong is that they try to do everything from day one. Yes, time management is important, but no, you don't, I mean, unless your concepts are clear, why should you even bother about time management? Time management would come into the picture only after you know the concepts thoroughly, right? And now to answer the question, that most of you may have, how much time is it going to take me to prepare for the GMAT exam? So the answer to the question is, it depends on the student, right? If some of you who are currently students, you guys will need to spend less time in this concept building, stage. Some of you who are from engineering background, you would need less time to spend in this phase, because you know maths. But if you are a doctor, if you are from humanities background, you might need to spend more time in this phase. So depending on, what level you are at, so you will need to spend different amounts of time in each phase. Another variable is that if you are currently working or if you are currently a student, so GMAT preparation is not your primary thing, right? You would be probably be studying for maximum 1 hour or 2 hours a day. So for then based on that, obviously the time taken in each phase would be longer. However, if you have free time and you can devote 4 to 5 hours a day, then for you the time taken in each phase would be less. So it is so how much time it's going to take you to prepare for the exam, it depends on how much time it's going to take each of you for each phase of this exam, right? So everybody understood? Is that clear? So please click a screenshot of this. When you start preparing for your GMAT exam, I repeat, do remember to develop these skills one at a time. Don't try to get to the end, get to the goal post without first, starting to walk, right? You can't run, unless you first learn to walk. Okay, everybody clear? Can you please respond in the chat with a yes, or, if you need me to repeat anything? Is everyone clear? Okay, do take a screenshot of this. Now, I just like to spend a couple of minutes on managing time in the verbal section, right? So, verbal section is the part where Indian students struggle the most. Even if you are from an English honors kind of background, still, this managing time in the verbal section is, is a little different, right? So, in maths, you have got 31 questions in 62 minutes. So, it's like 2 minutes per question. That's it. You just divide. But in verbally, that's not the case. Yes, you have 36 questions to be done in 65 minutes, but it is not, the target is not the same amount of time for each question. Depending on the type of question, the time, the timing varies a lot. So the one type of question that you will get is called SC, or sentence correction. This is a grammar question. Okay. So this type of question, they are shorter. So the target should be an average of 30 seconds per question. So if you are solving 10 SC questions, then you should spend 5 minutes, right? Then the next type of question is called critical reasoning. This is a little longer type of question than sentence correction. So the target should be an average of 90 seconds. That means if you are solving, like say 10 questions of critical reasoning, you should spend 15 minutes. So in 15 minutes, you should be able to solve 10 critical reasoning questions, right? Now this is an average. So if a particular question is very long, then it may take you up to 2.5 minutes. But then the shorter questions you should be able to do in about a minute. So the average then remains 90 seconds. So for critical reasoning type of questions, 90 seconds is the average time. Then see, of these 36 questions, the maximum number of questions that you will get is reading comprehension. 14 questions. Of these 36 questions, 14 of them are going to be reading comprehension questions. 14 questions are split into 4 passages. So you will get 4 passages. And in each passage, you will have 3 to 4 questions, building to a number of 14, So the 65 minutes that you will get. So you will not get separate time, to read the passages. So these 4 passages, you will have to spend time reading these passages also. Some of these passages are going to be short and some of them are going to be very long, up to 5 paragraphs. Some of them may be just 3 paragraphs, some may be 5 paragraphs. So on an average, 3 minutes you should spend on reading the passages. Therefore, 12 minutes of these 65 minutes, 12 minutes would go in just reading the passages, not in solving questions. So you are left with actually 53 minutes for the 36 questions. I hope everybody is clear with that. So the actual time calculation in verbal section is that you have 53 minutes to solve the 36 questions, not 65, because you will need time to read the passages also. Okay. So I repeat, the majority of the questions in the verbal section are reading comprehension questions. So when you are preparing also, you have to prepare smart, right? Do not be lazy about doing reading comprehension passages. People, no, students, they usually get bored with reading comprehension passages. If they have half an hour to practice, they would rather do maths or they would rather do sentence correction questions because they are easier. But reading comprehension, they get bored. But you cannot afford to get bored. Majority of your questions are going to be reading comprehension questions. Okay, so once you have read the passages, then your target should be for these 14 questions, so to say, you should be spending 21 minutes, so 90 seconds on an average for the question. So this should be your target timelines. Okay, so when you are, so I repeat, 36 questions, 65 minutes does not mean that you'll have or you should spend equal amount of time per question. That's not the case. When you are doing that timed test, when you are in the 3rd phase of your GMAT preparation, these should be your target timelines. If you are doing 20, let's say I'll go reverse. If you have 15 minutes, in a day to prepare for the GMAT exam, so in those 15 minutes, you should try to do a sentence correction exercise with 30 questions, or you should try to do a CR exercise, critical reasoning question with maybe 22 questions. Or if you are doing, reading comprehension passages, then you'll probably be able to do only about 2 passages, right? Everybody clear? Everyone clear about how to manage your time, how to plan your time in the verbal section? Again, I repeat, if you want to take a screenshot of this, please do so. I would not want you to forget, this, because it's a very, very important part of your preparation. So, SC stands for sentence correction, CR stands for critical reasoning, and RC stands for reading comprehension. If you want to make a note, you can. All right, so are you ready to solve questions now? Are you guys ready to solve a couple of, try your hands at a couple of questions? Okay, this is the first question. This is an example of a sentence correction or SC question. So there is a sentence in this type of question. There is a sentence, as you see, a portion of this sentence is underlined. If you note, so in this question, for example, this portion is underlined. Option A is this portion only, right? Nothing new, this portion only. So what you have to read is that, if you think the sentence is correct as it is, then A will be your answer. If you think the sentence is wrong, then you have to replace the underlined portion with B, C, D, or E. If you think that no, the underlined portion is wrong, but B is the correct answer, so this should be it, and then B will be answer. If you feel that C, then C will be answer. So in sentence correction questions, you will get a sentence with a portion of it underlined, and this portion is either right or wrong. If the portion is right, then A is your answer. If the portion is wrong, then you will have to replace it with the correct one from B, C, D, or E. All right. So this type of question, again, as I said earlier, your target should be to do in 30 seconds. Now this question, for instance, this is an easy question. So A student who would have gone through the Jamboree preparation would probably take about 10 seconds to solve, 10 to 15 seconds to solve this question. But since today you are seeing this type of question for the first time, I would give you a minute to solve this. So please try to solve this question and type your answer in the chat window. Your answer would come only to me, so you don't have to worry. So please solve this question, take a minute and type your answer in the chat window. Everyone, please type your answers. There is no, it's okay to get it wrong. Don't worry about it. Please type your answers in the chat. Okay, so 1 minute is up. If you could finish it, great. That's fine. And even if you were not able to finish it, that's okay. As I said, you was at the very initial stages of a preparation, so it's okay. Don't worry about it. Okay, so now the first thing that you should do is that, so traditionally, how you would solve this type of question is that you would read the sentence, right? Then you would read the option. How many of you did this? Did you read the sentence? Then you plugged in the answer of these options. How many of you did this? If you did, if you follow this approach, can you, can you type a yes in the chat window? Okay, everybody did this approach, right? So now this approach is fine, but in terms of the GMAT exam, this is an extremely time consuming approach, right? There's nothing wrong with this approach, by the way, but it's extremely time consuming. When you are reading, when you're reading this, when you're reading this, then you don't even know what is happening. And then by the time when you are plugging in option B, you're plugging in option C, by the time you are reading option D, everything seems to sound correct, or you would have forgotten what B was like. right? So that is the problem with this approach, otherwise nothing else. And therefore it ends up being very, very time consuming. So the first strategy for solving sentence correction questions on the GMAT is that do not read the main sentence in the beginning. Start by scanning the answer options. Scanning means just read the first few words. Don't read the answer options also completely, right? Just read the first few words to see if there is any difference, right? So you are just scan the answer options to see, you know, what you can get. Now, when you do this, you see that 4 of the answer options start with the words, you know, unlike, in comparison with, unlike, and in comparison with. So these are words that are used to compare things, right? And so that is now a hint, right? So when there is this kind of sentence, you know, comparison. So this is how it works. So you will have, let me change the color. 1 second. So now this is a GMAT rule. So unlike blah, 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 something, the sentence would be there and then sentence. So this is the sentence structure, right? So unlike or in comparison with, so the comparison word is going to be there. And then you have got, you know, the comma here and then full stop. So the things that are getting compared, they're located immediately after the word unlike and immediately after the word comma. And when GMAT, you know, on the GMAT, when you get these type of questions, 99% of the times, they are going to test your ability to compare correctly. So what you have to see is that, are these two things comparable or not? For example, you know, you can compare only comparable things. You cannot compare a car with a human being. You cannot compare, you know, money with an animal, right? You can compare only comparable things. So that is a very logical, you know, logical point that the GMAT is testing you on. It's testing you on your logical ability. So now let's see. So to see what is happening, to see whether the comparable things are, you know, are getting compared or not. So what you should do is that in option A, for example, after the word unlike, I have got the United Kingdom. What is a United Kingdom? It is a geographical location. It is a country. So you can compare a country with a country or some other geographical region. You know, you cannot compare. So you get an idea that the first item, like here, is United Kingdom. And what is it getting compared with? So you see that there's a comma, but it starts with where. So where, that, which. So these words, they just give you additional information of what has come, you know, before. So this is not what is getting compared with. So I find the next comma and then I see the word rains. So in option A, a country is getting compared with a weather phenomenon. So is UK comparable with rains? Can you compare the UK with the rains? You cannot. So this is wrong comparison. In option B, I have got United Kingdom farmers. So the item, so the first item, so this item, right? In option B is farmers, which are human beings. So you are comparing, and the comma is here. So the second item is the rains. So you are comparing farmers and rains. Is that comparable? Yes, no? Can you compare farmers with rains? You cannot. So that's also wrong. Option C has a bigger problem. Unlike those. So the moment you see those, you should stop. Those, that. So they refer to nouns that have come before. On the GMAT, the grammar rule is that when you have word, you know, that, those, so they refer to the noun that has come before. In this case, there is nothing before. So for option C, I don't even bother to see, you know, what the second item is. Option D, in comparison with the United Kingdom. So I have got a country and then I have got the rains. Same problem as option A. So once I've eliminated 4 answer options, by default, you know, my answer is E. However, if you want to check whether the right things are getting compared or not, if you can read, in the UK, farmers can usually depend on rain or snow all year long but in most parts of India. So basically in option E, the UK is getting compared with most parts of India. So both these things are geographical locations. You can compare geographical locations. Therefore, in E, correct comparison is happening. Therefore, E is your correct answer. But on exam day, you don't even have to check whether you got E right or not. Once you have eliminated A, B, C, and D, by default, E becomes your correct answer. Everybody clear? Did you understand the rules and the strategy for this question? Is everybody clear? If you have any question, can you please type in the chat? Okay. So I think everybody got this. So let's do now one more question in this. Remember, do not read the main sentence. Start by scanning the answer options to see if you can, to see if you can spot anything, and then proceed from there, right? Okay, everyone done? Even if you're not done, it's okay. As I said, this is the first time we are doing these questions probably, so it's okay not to finish on time. Don't let it bother you. All right. So again, this is a pretty long question. So if you start, like if you just read the question and then plug in, it's going to take you a lot of time. And this is a question that is again should be done in 15 to 20 seconds maximum, not even 30 seconds, right? So don't read the question. Let's scan the answer option. So when you are scanning, so you see that, that they enforce for, so you see some enforce, they enforce, for enforcing, enforce, to enforce, right? So there's something, so you don't know, it's difficult to say whether it's going to be for, is it a preposition error, for versus to versus that, right? Or is it they or it, is it singular or plural? In 3 of its options, you have got their. In 2 options, you have got its, right? So it's singular or plural. So there can be different types of errors, which is good now. Okay. Now in this type, now another tip is that when you, after getting an idea, it can be either a singular plural error or a preposition error. So you get a broad idea of what kind of error you are looking for. Now you'll obviously have to go and read the sentence. But when you read the sentence, don't just read from under the blah blah. Don't just read from the beginning. Always start by reading the first word before the underlined portion. Very often GMAT places a hint there. Now in this case, when I see, when I do this, so instead of reading this, you first read the first word before the underlined portion, which is a or. Now or on the GMAT exam can come alone on its own as or, and it comes also as a part of a pair called either or. So when I see or the first, again, this is a GMAT, these are GMAT trends, right? Either I'm going to get a simple or it's going to be a part of the pair either or. So I'll just do a quick check. I'm not going to read the sentence completely. I'll just see if there is the either here. So I see that it is either. So the word or is appearing as either or. Now there is the GMAT, a majority of the sentence correction questions, they test you on a rule called, parallel construction. So parallel construction means whenever things are joined, in this case, either or joining things, whenever things are joined, the things that are getting joined have to be in the same format. So if I say, let me type it out here. If I say either drinking or sleeping, right? So I'm writing either drinking or sleeping, or I can say either drink or sleep. Or I can say either to drink or to sleep. So these are all correct because after either, if I have an ing kind of verb, so in this case, I have got an ing kind of verb. So here also I have got, after or I have got an ing kind of verb. After either, here I have got a simple verb. After or I have got a simple verb. So same format has to be maintained. So this rule is called, the technical language of this technical name of this rule is called parallel construction, but it's simple that whenever things get joined, they have to be in the same format. That's it. So either to drink or to sleep. So my construction is preposition plus verb. So, after either I have got preposition plus verb. So after or also I must have preposition plus verb. So similarly, if after either, if I have a noun, then after or also I must have a noun. So this is the same format has to be maintained. And when I see the either or, so that's what I'm going to do. I see what is after either, right? So after either I have got a to, which is a preposition. And then I have a verb. So I have a preposition plus verb combination. I don't need to read all of these stuff. That's not important. Now to see whether there is a parallel construction error or not, I will just see after or what I have. Do I have a preposition plus verb in a combination? In option A, I have got that and they. So they is not a verb. That is sometimes is a preposition, but they is not a verb. So this is out. Option B, yes, I have got a preposition and yes, I have got a verb, but the verb is ing. I need a simple verb. So B is also wrong. Option C, they is not a preposition. Option D, it is not a preposition. So by default, E becomes my answer. But if you see also, E is in the same format. To is a preposition and force is a verb. So I have got the preposition plus verb combination after or, just the way I have after either. So all my A, B, C, D, all these 4 options, they violate the rule of parallel construction. Only option that is following the rule of parallel construction is option E. Therefore, E is my correct answer. So as I said, this question, is something that, if you follow the methods that we teach you in your class, in our classes, if you follow the method, you should be able to solve easily within 20 seconds, not more than 20 seconds, right? Everybody clear with this question? See, the traditional method, if you try to solve this, like, okay, under Safe Drinking Water Act, the environmental blah, blah. No, it's a huge, huge sentence. You will not be able to solve this in less than 1.5 minutes, right? Yes, Garima Arora, you say that you have a doubt. What is your doubt? Anybody else has any doubts? Any questions? Okay, so that's all from my end. If you guys would want a more detailed demo class of how Jamboree teaches GMAT, today I showed you only one type of questions, that is sentence correction. But if you would like to know about critical reasoning, reading comprehension, etc., we'd be happy to give you a more detailed demo. You can leave your number in the chat, right? And as I said earlier, we'd be happy to have a profile discussion session with you as well. And if anybody has any questions, you can raise your hand. I will give you mic access and then you can ask your question. So Amritansh, you were asking, how can CAT or other Indian MBA exams preparation help in GMAT prep? So Amritansh, the maths that you get in CAT, right? So in the math level of the CAT exam is far higher, than GMAT. So if you're preparing for the CAT, then it will help in the definitely help in the math preparation of the GMAT exam, and but not so much for the verbal. But yes, you will save time in the math section of your verbal. Syed Ayesha, you want to know, can I prepare for GRE with GMAT syllabus? The math portion you can. GMAT math is more difficult than GRE math, so you can. On the GMAT, so you have got critical reasoning and reading comprehension. So those two types of questions are also there in the GRE, but in the sentence correction portion of GMAT is not there in GRE. So you will be able to prepare like 70-80%, but not fully. Pahari, you were asking, I'm a dentist, may I appear? Oh yeah, we get a lot of, not just dentists, we get lots of doctors, vets, so that, yes, you're perfectly fine. You can prepare for the GMAT exam. Maybe you joined a little late. So I did mention that the syllabus of GMAT math is 9th, 10th level maths, only a couple of concepts from class 11th. So once you do a quick recap of those basic concepts, you should be fine. So Garima, you want to know, is GMAT for entrance of MSc or PhD abroad? So Garima, GMAT exam is, you would need, if you want to do an MBA abroad, or if you want to do a PhD in management related courses. But if you're looking for, masters in economics or computer science, etc., then GMAT is not the exam. Then GRE is the exam that you have to prepare for. Right? Okay, does anybody have any other questions? I hope you found this session useful. I hope you like the questions that we solved. And as I mentioned, we'll be very happy to give you a more detailed demo. And some of you, actually, a lot of you have left your numbers. We would be getting in touch with you in the next couple of days. Does anyone have any other questions? If not, you can feel free to leave. Have a great weekend. And if you have any question, you can raise your hand. I can give you mic access. So Garima, if you want to do PhD in chemistry or MSc in chemistry, then you have to take the GRE exam, not GMAT. So Ayesha, yes, GMAT is accepted in business analytics courses. This session is getting recorded, and if you want a recording of this session, then you can leave your number in the chat. But it will anyway be sent to the email ID which you use to register for this webinar. Dhanju, you're asking without job experience, how can I get admission into top B school? So if you do not have any work experience, then there are some specialized MBA programs for freshers. They're called, whether it is Harvard or Chicago Booth. So they have, specialized MBA programs for freshers. So if you want more information, our team would anyway be getting in touch with you, right? So Rakshak, so we have a session, upcoming session on GRE as well. It's sometime next week. All right, so that's all for now. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Have a great weekend.